Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into the Autumn 2025 forecast, GavsWeatherVids. So here we go, everyone. We've been building up to the autumn forecast over the past 3 months while we've been doing our autumn updates. We've done, I think, 9 autumn updates and 3 season water roundups. It's all been building up to this point where we're releasing our forecast, and I'm going to get on with that for you in a moment. Exciting day at GavsWeatherVids. We only release 4 long-range forecasts a year, so it's going to be a pretty auspicious day. Yeah, please like, share, subscribe. Thank you so everyone for doing that. Just say the first video today, so 6 AM UK weather forecast, and 8 to 14 there is on the way a little bit later on today as well. I had hoped to do one last GavsWeatherVids Sunday roundup on this final Sunday of August, but time has been against us, unfortunately, so I haven't been able to get that set up. However, it means that when we do next week's first winter 2025-20 update, you'll be seeing lots of things afresh that we would otherwise cover in the Sunday roundup. So I guess that has that going for it. Anyway, don't get ahead of ourselves. We've got an autumn forecast to do, but we start thinking about winter updates. So let's crack on with your autumn forecast. Just to say thank you so much to Richard, the amazing Richard Short Ricardo, for our lovely autumn forecast gift. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you so much to Terry Scully, to Shrine Brian, hashtag Team Gav, doing an awesome job. And I'll hand out thanks, of course, at the end of the forecast. Right, well, let's crack on then. So the first thing we're going to do, as always, is have a look at a spreadsheet. So Terry has been compiling this. This is Gav's Autumn 2020. Put Team in Gav. This is Gav's Autumn 2025 hits spreadsheet. So this has everything that we've been looking at throughout this season. Top 10 warmest Septembers, for example, maturing easterly QBOs, July, England, Wales, rainfall, top 10 dry summers, more that we can look at. So we've got the solar years just here, for example, and so on and on. It goes, all the things that we looked at through this season listed within the spreadsheet. And then these are the years, of course, 1950 all the way down to 2024, last year. And each of these numbers represents an individual hit. So, for example, the year of 1950 has turned up 3 times throughout our season of updates. 1951 hasn't showed up at all, so definitely discard that one for autumn forecast purposes. 1952 showed up quite a bit. 4 times that's appeared within our autumn update, but not quite good enough to make it into our analog years for the forecast. One year that does make it in is 1955. That's turned up 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 times. So 5 hits for 1955. We've got 1959, even better hit rate. That's turned up 6 times. We'll definitely be making it in to our leading analog years for the autumn forecast. Some years that are discarded. How many times 1962 turned up? That's turned up 3 times. Not too bad, but not good enough to make it into our forecast. And of course, we've also got 1976 here, which turned up quite a lot. That's turned up 5 times, and so the autumn 1976 will be showing up within our leading analog years. With 5.5 hits, we've got that's based on the solar cycle, by the way. That's where the half comes in. We've got 1989 and 1990, showing up 5.5 times, and definitely making it in to our forecast overall. And I can tell you that our leading year is actually 2022. 2022 has showed up 9 times, so we've seen that pretty much, I think, every time that we've done an update throughout this season. Very strong hit rate for 2022, and that is the leading analog years. So Shire done a little table for us showing all of our years that are going to be making up this forecast. So with 5 hits, we've got 1955. Here we go, Ben. With 5 hits, we've got 1976. With 5 hits, we've got 2011. With 5 hits, we've got 2017. With 5 hits, we've got 2020. With 5.5 hits, we've got 1989. With 5.5 hits, we've got 1990. With 6 hits, we've got 1959. 2003 and 2024, and our leading analogue year for this year's autumn 2025 forecast is 2022, and that has 9 hits showed up 9 times throughout this season. So that is the tale of the tape. If you like 1955, 1976, 2011, 2017, 2020, 1989, 1990, 1959, 2003, 2024, and 2022. Thank you so much to Terry Scully for compiling the spreadsheet for us throughout this season. Thank you so much to Shrine for the table. Shrine for the table. Right, okay, let's have a look then. So this is our first year, our first autumn. If you like, it's 1955 with 5 hits. This autumn, anticyclonic autumn, really high pressure out to the west, low pressure is to the east. So a dry but rather coolish autumn there in 1955, I think. Then with 5 hits again, we've got 1976, absolute deluge autumn with low pressure in through the west of Europe and into the Atlantic. We have a 2-year drought and we make it up throughout 1 season in the autumn of 1976. Absolutely incredible deluge. With 2011, we've got a very warm autumn again with 5 hits, high pressure to our east, low pressure is out to the west, and we draw up a southerly flow once again. So a lot of dry weather, mainly dry through that autumn. Of course, some rain at times, but a lot of dry weather, and the main thing about it, though, is very warm. 2017 is rather cooler autumn, does have got a wet September as well, with low pressure to our east and northeast, higher pressure out in the Atlantic, and we bring the wind in from a westerly direction. So a wet September, which for the era is quite unusual. Of course, we get the remains of Hurricane Ophelia in October, which is quite a warm month, and then a little bit cooler in November. A few cold snaps appearing with that one. And then with 5.5 hits, we've got 1989. Now, this was my hunch for what this autumn was probably going to do, I have to say. As I've been going along through these updates, you know, it's not just this season, but most seasons, I kind of get a feel for where I think things are going. And for much of the updates, I was thinking, like, 1989... that kind of autumn. So a lot of dry and very mild, it's not quite warm weather through September, stretching out into October, and then possibly turning more unsettled and wetter into November, and a mild autumn as well. That was my hunch, but I think that could be a little bit out of the window, actually. But anyway, with 5.5 hits, 5.5, we've got 1989, mainly dry and warm autumn, certainly in the first half of it anyway. And then we've got 1990, which is a rather more unsettled and cooler autumn. Does have some cold snaps in November, but quite mild in October. With 6 hits, we've got 1959. Again, that's similar to 1989. Really quite an anticyclonic, mainly dry and warm autumn. For that one, with high pressure way to the east, low pressure out in the Atlantic, and winds coming up for a southerly or a southeasterly direction. Quite a dry, warm autumn, certainly September and much of October. It does change later in October to something wetter, and then November again is rather wetter. So sorry, it wouldn't be a Gav long-range forecast about cough. We've got 2003. So this one has a dry and warm September until the end of it, when it turns a lot cooler. Dry but quite chilly in October, and then more mixed into November. With 6 hits again, we've got 2024. So last autumn, of course, has a big deluge, which you don't get for analog at all, but does have a big deluge in September. Otherwise, it turns drier later on in the autumn. And then with 9 hits, our leading analogue year is 2022. Now, of course, after the long hot summer of 2022, it breaks at the beginning of September with those tremendous thunderstorms. And then the rest of the autumn is warm but wet, low pressure out to our west, so it's southerly southwesterly autumn, so quite warm, quite mild, but also pretty wet as well. Okay, so let's put all of that together then. This is how all Septembers combined are looking for all of our leading analogue years. These are all years scoring 5 or more, so all of the years included for this. And we see perhaps a cooler signal for September's with some higher pressure out in the Atlantic and some lower pressure to our east. So it could be, like an easterly type month. All October's combined for years scoring 5 or more has low pressure away in the North Atlantic, high pressure into our south. So a mild signal for the October, dry to the south, most unsettled up in the north. And then all November's combined, quite interesting, sort of showing a bit of Scandinavian high type influence. But low pressure out to the west, I'm sure it's a particularly cold patch. It could be cold, could bring in the wind from the east, but also with that, we could bring in, like southerly, southeasterlies and not be overly cold. But it's certainly not a drier signal anyway, even if it's quite mild into the Novembers. All autumns combined, showing an anticyclonic signal, quite a dryish autumn. And again, this is like what I had in mind, really, for the autumn forecast. So, quite a lot of dry weather to come then. This is how the temperature anomaly looks for all of those years, scoring 5 more, all analogue years together with an above average temperature likely. And precipitation largely a drier signal as well, so a warm and dryish autumn expected there from all of those years. But of course, we've got to narrow things down a bit more, so let's get rid of the years that scored 5 and 5.5 hits and just look at the years that scored 6 hits. So, with 6 or more, all Septembers combined. And by the way, this leaves us with 2024, 2003, 1959, and 2022. And it's a much more anticyclonic signal for the Septembers with high pressure in the Atlantic away to the north and northwest, so mostly dry signal for the Septembers. All Octobers look rather anticyclonic as well. High pressure tended to be over and to the east of the country, low pressure down to south. That will bring the wind up for a southerly or a southeasterly direction. And then all November is looking mild, perhaps wetter, low pressure in the Atlantic, bringing that southerly southwesterly high pressure retreating away to the northeast. So, it could be a west signal for the Novembers, but also potentially mild. And all autumns combined, overall looking anticyclonic again, with above average heights, high pressure through North Atlantic and into northern and western Europe. Temperature anomaly, surprise, surprise, is predicted to be above average there for those autumn, scoring 6 or more. And precipitation-wise, we look like that. So, weak signal, but probably still on the drier side. And then lastly, the leading analogue year, of course, I've got down it's not no more, but there is no more from this one. It's 2022. So this one with September 2022, I guess. So high pressure to the North Atlantic, low pressure to our south and east. So again, it's a wetter signal for the south with both tremendous thunderstorms early on in the month. Higher pressure up to the north. Quite a mild September until later on when it does turn a bit cooler. October 2022 looks like that. So drier to our south and east, low pressure out to the west, and we bring up those winds from a southerly southwesterly direction, so a mild signal for the October 2022. And then November 2022 looks like that, with deep low pressure in the Atlantic, bringing a very wet month potentially, but also quite mild. The autumn of 2022, just to recap, has low pressure out to the west of the country, so it is an unsettled autumn. It is quite a warm autumn, though, with a temperature anomaly that's largely above average, and rather wetter signal, especially so perhaps for more southern regions. It is a more unsettled autumn, but many of those leading analog years. Of course, you'll never get a like-for-like match, so this autumn will not be a like-for-like match to 2022. Every year is unique and individual to itself. We're just looking for, certain pointers that are similar this time to previous years. Right, okay, well, we've gone through the data there, and looking quite interesting, I think you'll agree. So I'm going to pause the video very quickly, and then when I return, I will be revealing all. And you don't want to miss that. Maybe you do. You do. I think you do. No, I'll give you the GavsWeatherVids autumn forecast in a second. So see you in a moment. Okay, we're back. And it's time to give you our autumn forecast. And we've got problems here. Problems. Because, well, the analogues are actually looking quite similar to what I was expecting about halfway through these autumn updates, which is a relatively dry autumn, quite a warm autumn, at least the first half of it till the middle of that part of October. Then maybe a change in November, something more unsettled but still mild. Of course, the model output at the moment looking a lot more unsettled for September than you will think from those years. Well, although September 2022 was quite an unsettled and wet month, we do also have to have 2017 in the mix as well. So I think, rather unexpectedly, and going against the analogues, this doesn't happen very often. Normally I do side with the analogues, but I think we're going to go for quite an unsettled autumn this time. I've got a feeling the prolonged dry spell is probably broken. Never say never. I've got a feeling the prolonged dry spell has probably currently breaking, and so I think we're likely to have quite a wet autumn potentially as well. So this could be our first above average rainfall season for quite some time. Of course, it's possible that I'm going over the top with this based on what we're seeing within the model output at the moment. But I'm going to go for above average rainfall, actually, and that goes against those analogues completely. So that's first to get on the table. I think we're in for quite a wet autumn, particularly the first half of it, actually, and quite unusually. So September, possibly into October, likely to be wetter than normal, I think. Although we might have a period of dry weather around the middle part of the month, but I think then the unsettled weather comes back as we get later on into September, and that could carry us through into October as well. Now, the second half of the autumn gets a little bit more uncertain. The further out we get, of course, we may start to build up more in way of anticyclonic conditions as we get into the second half of the autumn. We did see that coming through quite strongly within the analogues for November. If we do, then the exact position of the anticyclone is all important as to whether it turns a lot colder and we start getting frost and fog, or whether, it's just quite mild with like dank and gloomy weather as you can get in November. So I think probably it turns drier later on in the autumn, but even then I would imagine it's likely to still be relatively unsettled as well. As far as the temperature of it is concerned, I think going to be above average again. It's a pretty safe bet at the moment for above average temperature, so probably about 1-2 degrees above normal. We start off with quite a wet patch that's going to produce a lot of warm nights. I would have thought daytime temperatures might not be that warm though in September, so I would imagine September's CT probably comes out quite close to average, actually. Now, as the season progresses, it gets more difficult. So October probably likely to be another pretty mild month, I would have thought. Maybe by November something colder could start to appear if that anticyclone gets going. But I think overall probably above average temperatures and above average rainfall is what we're going for in this autumn. It's a very, very, very low confidence forecast, I have to say. Probably no more than about 25 to 30%. It goes against the analogues. If I was going purely with the analogues, I'd be going for a dry autumn, and I'd be saying, the unsettled start of September isn't going to last, and the high pressure will fight back. And given the persistence of high pressure, really since the end of last year, beginning of this year, December, January, then that certainly can't be ruled out. It's a possibility that the high pressure comes back again and, get another protracted period, maybe lasting several weeks of anticyclonic weather. But I just got a feeling, I just got a hunch that, the dry spell, when prolonged dry spells break, they tend to break, So although there may be attempts, I think we'll get one of those in the middle of September, although there may be attempts to go back to the high pressure, to the anticyclone, it never really works out. And when a dry spell breaks, it tends to break. So that's what I think has happened, or is currently in the process of happening. And so we're going for a wetter than average season against our analogues, and also above average temperatures. Frost, snow, winter hazards probably occurring with below average frequency. We may get a couple of storms in September, a couple of windstorms if those low pressure really start to deepen themselves up, and particularly if they have Atlantic hurricane influences with them as well. So we could see a couple of quite strong blows during September, but otherwise I'm not sure it's going to be a particularly stormy autumn, but probably quite wet. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's as much as I can do for you. As I said, it's a very, very low confidence forecast. And about, 4 weeks ago, I would have been very surprised if I was delivering this forecast. Wasn't what I was expecting to be giving you. So, as ever, we're going to see how it plays out. When we get to the beginning of December, we'll review the forecast, go back and see how I think our summer forecast has gone quite well. I've got to do a verification for that in a week or so's time, but I think we've done all right with the summer forecast. Not too bad anyway. I think got most of the trends with that correct. But of course, you're only good as your last forecast, so this one could and probably will go horribly, horribly wrong. We'll see. You'll find out actually tomorrow on Monday on our Facebook page what Terry Scully is forecasting for the autumn of 2025. So Terry's September and autumn forecast will be issued tomorrow. That's going to be an interesting read, and make sure you're following and you're subbed to our Facebook page. I'll share it across the other social media networks as well, of course. Thank you so much to Terry Scully, always the guiding hand on the shoulder. So thanks so much to Terry, thank you so much to Shryan, and thank you so much to Richard for our amazing autumn updates and autumn forecast given. By the way, the Swingo for the winter updates will be coming back. You won't see it immediately, but later on in the update, probably about update number 4 or 5, the Swingo will be back. And that leads us very nicely onto next week. So now that the autumn forecast is released and issued for you, the next season that we're on to is winter. So yes, GavsWeatherVids winter 2025-26 updates and forecasts will begin. The countdown to that gets going next week on Sunday, the 7th of September. That is when we will be releasing update number 1, and I can't wait to get started on another season of winter updates for you. Thank you so much to #TeamGav. Thank you so much to all of you for sticking with this season of updates. We started off releasing these on a Wednesday. It didn't work. People weren't interested in watching these on a Wednesday. So we moved the long range back to Sundays. The views lifted up, to a reasonable level that I was happy with. So thank you so much to all of you for coming back and watching our long range updates on a Sunday. And I'm sorry, for messing around with times and dates, but Sunday will remain, long range day for GavsWeatherVids. I say next Sunday, 7th of September, is when we will be releasing our first winter update. Right, we'll end it there then. We're going to be back a little bit later on with a 10 to 14 day, so come back for that a little bit later on. For this remote, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon, and bye for now.